Hey everybody, happy Sunday. I wanted to use this time to give a quick, encapsulation of my philosophy and the work I'm doing. And if it resonates with you, I hope that you will get involved, as there are many ways to get involved, especially during this time. And with that, I will dive in. So, as some of you may know, prior to my work with Immersioneer and to kind of getting into mindfulness and meditation and just all things philosophy, spirituality, psychology, etc., I worked in advertising. And I worked with large consumer brands and helped them figure out, how to use smartphones and billboards and all different kinds of media to sell stuff. And around the time I turned 30, I just realized that the work wasn't really fulfilling for me, and on some deeper level, I just felt like something was wrong with the system itself, since it didn't seem to really be making people that happy. Endlessly stimulating consumption didn't really seem to be making anyone happy. Not the people. Not the, even the people at the top didn't even seem that happy. And likewise, the natural environment was not able to keep up with our consumption. So, I was just kind of aware that that wasn't working for me. And around that time, I had just a series of very profound experiences with, originally with psychedelics, but then later with a variety of non-psychedelic experiences that really just, on a personal level, I think taught me that there's just so much more to life than meets the eye, A, and B, that we all, by virtue of the way our minds work, we get loaded up with all this conditioning that becomes like a fortress, right? It becomes hard to see beyond the walls that we've learned. And, in my life, something like psychedelics were profound in knocking those walls down for a little bit and seeing what life was like without walls. And then all the experiences since have really been about trying to create more accessible on-ramps into transformations of consciousness, right? Everyone doesn't have to go out and do DMT or LSD or whatever other substance is the substance of the moment to open their minds, right? There are other ways to do it. Meditation, mindfulness, human relationship, dialogue, all these are different mechanisms for producing profound transformations of consciousness. And the reason I do this work now is because I believe that we as a society, as a civilization, need to have a profound transformation of consciousness to reimagine not only our systems and how they work or don't work, but our civilization, right? I think we all understand intuitively that we cannot afford to keep perceiving the world as a bunch of separate nations anymore. We are one world, and the actions of a country over here affect a country over here. And so how can we learn to think of ourselves as one whole system while still retaining that sense of individuality? Right? We don't want to lose our autonomy and our unique, dynamic personality to be a part of something larger. In a perfect world, we can be fully ourselves and also feel fully connected to that larger thing, whatever that thing is for you. So that's kind of the top line, but I just want to run through a couple things that have been coming up for me and that have been coming up with for a lot of folks that I talk with, both collaborators and friends and folks that have been a part of the events that I've been hosting online. The first is just this sense of overwhelm, right? Of knowing that something is wrong, something needs to be set right, and that we all want to do something about it. We want to be a part of the solution, but we don't really know what we can do, right? And to that, the question that comes up for me and the way I'm trying to focus my own self is, what is the unique thing or the unique work that you uniquely you, can do right now that can really contribute in some way. And yeah, that's kind of where I think everyone should start if you're trying to figure out how to contribute, how to be a part of the solution. That being said, when I ask myself that question, what is the unique way I can serve or help right now? To me, it's really about trying to help people understand the way that the consumer culture conditioning that we receive within, especially the West, within the modern Western world, hijacks our human well-being and makes us great consumers, but it doesn't make us fulfilled human beings. And I want to explore why that is. So, just making sure we're recording. We're good. So I think the first thing that's worth pointing out is that a little background on consumer culture, right, and how it came to be. So during World War I, World War II, there was a man who worked in propaganda, basically, on behalf of the U.S., whose name was Edward Bernays. And Edward Bernays was, in charge of figuring out how to get the public mobilized to support the war, support the war cause. And he was also, I believe, involved in figuring out how to, spread psychological warfare or manipulate the mind of the enemy during the war itself. I believe both wars. When Bernays came back stateside after the wars were over, the idea cropped up into his head that, he could continue to do propaganda during peacetime. And long story short, Edward Bernays became essentially the father of modern public relations, of figuring out how to use the media and all the tools and culture to mold the public mind. Now, Edward Bernays is an interesting guy to dig into, in large part just because he was so instrumental in driving the mechanisms of consumer culture in the post-war era, but also because he was the, I think, second cousin or related to Sigmund Freud, basically. So all of Freud's psychology in terms of how you manage the herd were central to the way that he saw the work he was doing, right? And the underlying idea was that how are we going to avoid another huge world war, right? How are we going to keep people at peace? And the solution at the end of the war, when we had all this industrial capacity to, shift from making tanks to making toasters, was, well, we need to figure out how to engineer desire in the minds of the public. We need to convince people to leave behind the austerity of, the war era and live in a time of plenty and bounty. And let's just churn 1,000 Oldsmobiles off the line and 1,000 toasters, millions of toasters, millions of Buicks, millions of cars, and convince people that the way to happiness and fulfillment is through owning lots of stuff, right? The idea here being that if we can insulate ourselves in our own little private kingdoms behind our white picket fences with our nice car and our nice lawnmower and our nice toaster and our 2.5 kids and our wife and our dog, and all the different things that we need to be happy, well, people will be so perfectly sedated inside their individual little life that they won't even be concerned about anything beyond, right? They won't be worried about, getting drawn into any kind of outer conflicts because they'll just be too happy. Well, fast forward to 2020, and I think what all of us are realizing to some level or another is that the materialistic culture of consumption, endless consumption, doesn't actually make us happy. It doesn't actually fill us up, right? And yet, the system has a lot of momentum behind it. And many of us are still stuck in the trap of thinking, if I could just make more money and own more stuff, I could be more happy. I could be more fulfilled, right? So that's kind of the quick primer on consumer culture, how it came to be, and how it's still a part of human consciousness. Now, deeply intertwined with consumer culture, of course, is capitalism. It's the free market economy, right, of bringing things to market and convincing people to buy the things and ensuring that you've got a consumer base that is eager and wants to purchase the things you produce, right? This is where advertising, marketing, public relations, digital marketing, all these different things come to play. Is how do we ensure that we profit, right? How do we ensure that that we survive as a company or as a business, right? Long story short is that we've created a capitalist system that's deeply interwoven with consumer culture that doesn't truly serve human well-being, right? The capitalist system serves the capitalist system. It's about how do we generate as much money as possible, much profit as possible, etc. The idea always being that the more money we make, the more wealth that is being created, the more well-being will be generated for all the human beings inside the system. Of course, what do we see in the West right now? Well, not only do we see a massive inequality of wealth, right, where some people have nearly all the money and the vast majority have practically nothing, but we also see that even the people at the top aren't that happy, right? Even the people that have all the stuff, all the shiny things, aren't that happy. So what does this tell us, right? It tells us that we have a system that feeds our false self, right? It feeds on our egoic self-image, right? If I can just get this car, get this thing, have this much money, have this nice job, then I can be happy, I can be fulfilled, right? But even the people at the top of the game aren't that happy and fulfilled, right? And all the money in the world can't change that. So there's something missing inside the system. There's something that's not being addressed, right? So what this tells me is that the systems we have created have estranged us as individual human beings from our true nature, right? Why are we so susceptible to buying and consuming things that don't actually make us happy? And why can't we see that it doesn't really make us happy? Why do we fall in the trap, right? To me, that points to a lack of self-awareness, right? So clearly, deepening in human self-awareness is a key part of the solution, whatever that form that takes. Intuitively, we just understand, you understand as well as I do, that something has to change. We might disagree on the form that change needs to take, but clearly something's got to give, right? If human suicide rates are going up, if depression's going up, if anxiety's going up, right? If the natural world is in decline, right? If our environment is being, hurt through this unconscious capitalist system, right? And people aren't actually getting happier from the consumer culture game, right? Something's wrong. Something has to change. And we're at a stage where we need to figure out how to make those changes. But I think the hard part is that a lot of us intuitively understand everything I'm saying. There's nothing new in what I'm communicating. And yet, most of us just want to escape from this reality. It feels too big. It feels too unwieldy. And we don't know what we can do, right? We don't know what the unique thing is that we can do right now to help. We have the desire, but we don't have the application. We don't have the structure to focus it. And so what's happening is there's a lot of human energy and capacity that could be going towards solving problems, but it's getting hijacked, right? It's getting hijacked by, a highly distracting consumer culture world that keeps on drawing our awareness into screens and phones and doesn't actually bring us into focus on the real challenge or problem that we need to solve, the opportunity that we have to step up and take responsibility. Now, I understand very deeply in my own life why we don't want to take responsibility, right? Because, even as I'm going through this right now, fears will pop up in my head. Oh, am I saying this right? Am I factually accurate? But here, I think what we have to remember is that we've entered a time where it's going to be confusing, where it's going to be complex, and where we're not always going to have all the answers ourselves. And that's okay. It's okay not to have all the answers yourself. You are one part of a much larger puzzle. And what we have to do right now is to figure out how to bring all the individual pieces together and to see the whole more effectively. And right now, it's very difficult to do that since we're all distracted by our smartphones, stuck in a consumer culture game that doesn't actually feed our souls and make us feel good, right? And when we're also stuck in a rat race of an unconscious capitalist system that isn't actually serving human well-being, right? So to me, if we're going to deepen in awareness, if we're going to show up and take responsibility and start to solve problems together, we have to reclaim our awareness, right? We have to reclaim it from all the things that we know deep down don't serve us. So in that spirit, right, of not being able to do it all by our individual little selves, the name of the game now is collective intelligence. It is, how do you and me and the person to your left and the person to your right come together and ask questions and explore together, right? How do we explore in such a manner that the usual psychological hurdles that would disrupt a normal conversation and people would get at their throats, how do we figure out how to get beyond that, right? You know we can do this. You know we can do this. And you know we can do this because you've accomplished it in individual relationships in your life, right? You've accomplished it with a dear friend, right? Where you just give each other the benefit of the doubt. You've seen it with your loved ones, right? With your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, your ability to accept someone's flaws and understand that amidst all the noise that there might be in what I'm saying, there's some signal there, right? There's something that resonates, and we need to take that thing that resonates and expand it, right? And we need to do that together. That's the name of the game. So, this is where Emergineer comes in. This is where collective intelligence comes in, is how do we step into a deeper dialogue with each other and begin to create together the transformation of consciousness that we need to reimagine our world, to reimagine our systems. So, in that spirit, what are the things that we're really learning to look beyond, in my opinion? Two things. The first thing is the human ego, right? For many of you, the term ego is something that we maybe have heard in our life. We've assumed it's something bad, and we just say, oh, I don't want an ego. Oh, don't be egotistical. All right, put that aside for now. Everybody has an ego. You've got one, I've got one. All an ego is a psychological structure that produces a sense of separateness, right? Right now, as I'm speaking as Clancey. I feel like I'm a separate being communicating with you, another separate being, or multiple beings, right? But at the deepest level, at a spiritual level, at an intuitive level, I understand, and you understand too, that underneath this form, underneath this superficial self, that we're all part of the same sea, right? We're all waves on the same ocean. So the first key thing we have to do is to learn how to see beyond our egoic selves. Once we can see beyond our egoic selves, we can begin to think about systems change, right? And how we create systems that truly serve every individual human being, right? Second thing, tribalism, right? Tribalism is a really tricky one because for so many of us, we're social beings. We want to belong to something. We want to feel a part of something larger than our individual selves, right? But in tribalism, what happens is we latch on to something, right? And that tribe could be a sports team. That tribe could be a political party. That tribe could be a religion. It could be any number of groups or nations. I think I might have already said that. The point is that when we identify with a tribe, what inevitably happens is we create opposition, right? Because when I'm an American, then I have to be at odds with a Russian or at odds with a person from China. When I am a Republican or a Democrat, I have to be at odds with the other party, right? So tribalism is tricky because it gives us a sense of belonging, which we as social creatures yearn for and want and need. But it doesn't give us that deeper level of connection and belonging that we're really after. And what I would suggest to you is that what we're really after is the deepest form of belonging that we as human beings are capable of. We are yearning to feel connected to life in the most profound and beautiful way we can. And you can't do that through tribalism, right? As long as there is an idea of versus, of me versus you, us versus them, the deeper belonging that we hunger for is inaccessible to us. We cannot get to it. So we have to learn to see beyond tribalism, right? We have to learn how to see beyond our in-group to that larger whole, right? So when you think about it, ego and tribalism are very related, right? Ego says, ego is, I'm looking at myself, my little me, right? And consider for a moment when you have your most transcendent, wonderful personal experiences, when you fall in love, when you feel deep connection, what happens? It opens up. You open up, and you feel this deeper connection, right? Tribalism is the same thing, but at a collective level, right? So as the ego learns to open up to others, as self learns to open up to other, same thing with tribalism. Your collective self of identifying with your in-group needs to open up to that broader we, that big I that we are all a part of. So that's pretty much it, guys. I really do believe that this time, this pause in our world is here to give us the opportunity to look at all of this, to look at all the parts of our system that don't work for us, that don't promote human well-being, that don't make us happy, right? That don't nourish our environment, that don't nourish our relationships, that don't, support community. We need to think through, why is all that stuff getting in the way? And move in the direction of what we know in our hearts and in our minds is the better world that we know is possible, right? And we know it's possible. Life is one big evolutionary process. There's a reason why we're not still apes and trees. Some apes got out of the trees and went looking for something different, So you're a part of evolution. You are a conscious agent within evolution. And all you have to do is to figure out how you can get outside yourself, right? How can you open yourself to something larger? So if that resonates with you guys, if you want to be a part of this kind of a conversation and help me with my very limited piece of the map to see a bigger picture, I invite you to be a part of anything and everything that I'm working on. So in terms of practical next steps, the first thing you could do is you can go to my website, clanceyhilkene.com. There is a digital events calendar right there that lists all the different kinds of events that I'm hosting from now until this quarantine is complete. So would love to have you guys for any and all of it. The link again is on my website, clanceyhilkene.com. And thank you all for A, your time, and B, your contributions to the projects this far. Obviously, in the spirit of collective intelligence, I could not do it alone. So thank you.